When retired Indian Air Force Lt-Gen Anil Chopra made a near-shouting appeal in the Eurasia Times, every letter of his pen was saturated with strategic anxiety. India must have its own fifth-generation fighter jet. Behind this declaration is the dilemma of a great power's sovereignty over the skies. The Russian Su57 was measured by the Indian test team radar reflection cross-section as high as 0.1 to 1 square meters, in the Indian Army was jokingly referred to as flying Lombard lens. This special amplification of radar signals of the device was used for training, but became a living target in the eyes of the opponent. The US F-35 export terms are more like a straitjacket, at any time may be due to Washington's political winds of sudden change, and locked the nerve center of the Indian warplanes. Late one night in the summer of 2025, in the Anka program lab in Bangalore, engineers were silent over the 37th failed stealth coating heat resistance test report, and outside the window there was a torrential downpour of rain, just like the pouring tears of this aviation power on the journey of the fifth-generation aircraft. The Indian Air Force's desire for stealth fighters can be traced back to the dawn of the new century, when it signed a joint development agreement with Russia for the FGFA in 2010, which ignited hopes that the $6 billion spent over a 10-year period would pass like an hourglass, only to come to a bitter end in 2020, when the Russians refused to open up the source code. The Russian side has always refused to open the source code, which means that India cannot independently upgrade the avionics system. Each system update has to look at the face of Moscow. More fatal is that its 117S engine is only 14.5 tons of thrust. It is difficult to support the 5th-generation aircraft's signature supersonic cruise capability, and the most angry Indian side is that, in the Indian Air Force's secret test, the Su-57's stealth performance is seriously not up to par, and radar reflectance cross-section is thousands of times higher than that of the F-22. The Su-57's performance, the radar reflection cross-section is thousands of times higher than that of the F-22. The road to the west is equally thorny, although India to $7.4 billion to purchase 26 French Rafale M fighter aircraft to show goodwill, and the introduction of the US F-414 engine to equip the domestic glory fighter. But when it comes to the F-35, the US negotiators always politely, but firmly close the channel of technology transfer. The reason is always the three words: technical sensitivity. 2025 July, Russia suddenly threw India lifeline, promised to deliver 30 aircraft within 3 years. In July 2025, Russia suddenly threw India lifeline by promising to deliver 30 Su-57Es within 3 years and to open up source code and engine technology. But this $10 billion deal has hidden mysteries. The Russian side of the annual production capacity of only 12, and the core components due to Western sanctions production capacity constraints. More dangerous is that the US sanctions against US adversaries act like a hanging sword, at any time, may be cut off the deal and will drag India's defense system into the abyss of sanctions. In the face of this predicament, the Modi government bit the bullet and approved Rs. $150 billion in March 2024 for the launch of the domestically produced Anka 5th-generation aircraft program. In a promotional video released by the Defense Ministry, the twin-engine heavy fighter jet is shown tearing through clouds in computer animation, claiming that it will have a top speed of Mach 1.8, a DSI air intake, and a built-in bomb bay, and that its performance will benchmark or even surpass that of the Chinese J-20. However, the shadow under the halo is suffocating. The highly expected domestic 110K class engine is still mired in a quagmire after 3 decades of research and development, with the overweight design leading to insufficient thrust-to-weight ratios, the high-pressure turbine blades frequently breaking during tests, oil leaks turning the test stand into an oil swamp, and the cumulative cost of more than $10 billion but no return on the money spent. The Anka had to continue to rely on the US-made F-414 engine with a thrust of only 9.8 tons, which was like putting sandbags on a Sprinter. Stealth technology is a desert from scratch. India has never independently designed a stealth shape. Radar-absorbing material technology formula is completely subject to imports, and even the built-in bomb bay, when the opening of the aerodynamic interference simulation need to be sent by France's Dassault Aviation on-site support. Institutional fiascos gnawed at the project's foundations like rusty cogs. Institutional fiascos are like rusty cogs gnawing at the program's foundations. The state-run Hindustan Aeronautics Corporation, HAC, and private firms are locked in a bitter infighting for Anka dominance. A repeat of the Splendid Warrior experience. The 40-year, $20 billion warplane was grounded in its entirety due to a lack of spare parts during the 2025 India-Pakistan border conflict. Ironically, The accident rate for HAL-assembled Su-30 MKIs is 3 times that of the original aircraft, and the bureaucratic system has resulted in a titanium alloy fastener purchase requiring 17 departmental stamps and taking up to 11 months. While the global race to develop a 6th-generation aircraft has been a loud and clear one, India is stumbling at the threshold of the 5th-generation aircraft. Europe's CAP program focuses on artificially intelligent air combat systems. France, Germany and Spain jointly promote FCAS emphasizes unmanned wingman swarming operations, and the United States GAD has entered the engineering verification stage, whose core specifications include all-area stealth and Mach 5 cruising capability. The Indian Anka's Mk2 is only planning to introduce the concept of artificial intelligence to command a swarm of unmanned aircraft, which is a whole generation behind the European technology blueprint. The generational gap is like a bottomless abyss. China's J-20 has already installed more than 200 aircraft, with its turbofan 15 engine helping it jump to Mach 2.8, and its base on the Tibetan Plateau is only 500 kilometers away from the Indian border. Pakistan's Air Force Commander's Office has a notepad with plans to introduce 60 J-35s by 2028, and Lockheed Martin's prototype of the Generation VI is expected to make its maiden flight in 2030. And the most optimistic projections for India's Anka won't be in service until 2035, by which time other countries' 6th-generation aircraft may already be cruising in the stratosphere, leaving India with another round of desperate catch-up. The Global Military Power Ranking 2025 puts India at number 4, and the sheer size of its 2,229 aircraft glows on paper. However, this bright data cannot hide the deep cracks in the airframe. 40% of the Air Force fighters are overage. MiG-21 crashed 104 times in the past 10 years, resulting in the death of 73 pilots, known as flying coffins, by military families. The evil consequences of less than 50% of the localization of the logistical aspects of the Rafale is clearly visible. Routine maintenance needs to be flown to France. Routine maintenance needs to fly to the French mainland. Su-30 MK IL-31 engine overhaul even to return to Russia. When the border alarm sounded, these delicate, universal brand equipment often collective silence. A deeper crisis lies in the loss of strategic autonomy. Retired Indian military officer Ajay Alawat in the Institute for Defense Analyses closed meeting painfully. In the past, we rely on imported equipment, stacked combat power. Now we have to take the world's most complex fighter source code to learn to become a self-taught, which is like skipping the secondary school textbooks directly to study a doctoral dissertation. Intriguing is that Russia's technology transfer to India's level far more than the terms of the year on China's Su-35. This differentiated treatment behind the Kremlin borrow India to balance the power of Asia's farsightedness. New Delhi Air Force Command Operations Room, a giant electronic screen real-time display of the border air situation. Staff officers' fingers across the southern foothills of the Himalayas. The Chinese Air Force J-20 cruise track is hanging over the head of the Sword of Damocles. The western screen, the Pakistani Air Force base of the newly received J-10C fleet of aircraft are practicing assault tactics in a wind tunnel laboratory outside Bangalore. The 1.8 model of the Anka is subjected to Mach 2.5 airflow, and engineers are nervously recording the flutter data. This is the 20th time they have revised the wing leading-edge design in 3 months. The stakes have long gone beyond the 1,500 crore rupees to the question of whether a nation with an ancient dream of flight can break free from the shackles of universal equipment and carve its name in the blue sky. When the year 2035 dawns, if the Anka is still stuck between drawing boards and prototypes, India is likely to lose its voice in the skies forever, because at that time, the 6th generation of fighter aircraft engine roar has resounded in the sky, and the Indian aviation industry clock, or will always stop in the 5th generation of the night before the dawn.